I woke up to find fresh ruts through my pumpkin patch. Again. The sight stopped me cold, coffee mug halfway to my lips. Deep grooves carved through the soil, pumpkin vines snapped and dangling like broken bones, dirt splattered across my porch. I swear I could still smell the exhaust hanging in the air. That was the third time this week, and the kicker, I already knew exactly whose tires they were. The Karen sisters, Patricia and Jolene, had treated my farm like their own private racetrack since the day they moved in. And, thanks to their best friend forever, Missy Davenport, our illustrious HOA president, they were untouchable. Here's the thing. I bought my property with the promise of peace. A little farmhouse on the edge of a neighborhood, a sliver of land zoned just outside HOA jurisdiction. Technically, my crops weren't their business, but when the sisters realized cutting across my field shaved 2 minutes off their drive to the main road, that was it. Suddenly, my land became the shortcut they just couldn't live without. I tried the polite route first. The first morning I found the ruts, I walked up the cul-de-sac, knocked on Patricia's door, and said, "Hey, looks like someone's been driving through my crops. Mind checking if it was you?" She smiled with that sharp saccharine sweetness that makes your teeth ache. "Oh, honey, we didn't think you'd mind. It's just dirt. Dirt that grows my food," I shot back. But Patricia was already closing the door, chirping, "Talk to Missy about it." So I did. I emailed, called, even showed up at Missy Davenport's pristine colonial with my boots still muddy. She answered in her Pilates gear, sipping lemon water like she was auditioning for a lifestyle magazine. "Missy, your friends are destroying my crops," I said, holding out photos of the damage. She barely glanced at them. "Well, technically, the community bylaws allow for easements across shared land. It's in Article 7, Section 3. It's not shared land. This is private. Mine." Missy tilted her head like I'd told her the sky was green. "Oh, sweetheart, this whole neighborhood is about community. If you're going to be difficult, it's going to reflect poorly on you at the next meeting." That's Missy's favorite weapon, social shame. She ruled our HOA not by rules, but by reputation. And the Karen sisters, they were her enforcers, always front row at meetings, always clapping the loudest at her speeches, always ready with a snide comment if someone dared to oppose her. The next HOA meeting sealed it. I showed up with printed photos of the ruts, proof of the dates and times I'd spotted their SUV. When it was my turn to speak, I laid everything on the table. "I don't want trouble," I said, holding the photos high. "I just want them to stop driving through my property." The room was silent for half a second. Then Patricia's voice cut through. "We're just trying to get home safely. The main road has potholes the size of craters. Would you rather we wreck our suspension?" Jolene chimed in, hand on her chest like a soap opera star. "And we thought we had your blessing. You waved at us the other morning." "I was waving for you to stop." Missy banged her little HOA gavel on the folding table. "Let's keep things civil. As president, I think the sisters have a valid point. Community easements exist to make life easier for all of us. Perhaps we should consider formalizing one through her property." The room buzzed. Neighbors whispered, some nodding along, others shifting uncomfortably. I felt the walls closing in. "Formalizing an easement means you're taking my land," I snapped. "You can't just vote away my rights because it's convenient." Missy's smile was paper thin. "No decisions tonight. We'll revisit at the next session. For now, let's move on." Translation. She'd already decided, and I'd lost. That night, I walked back across my field under the porch-light glow, anger simmering hotter than the summer air. The ruts cut so deep into the dirt they formed little trenches, glinting with pooled water from the sprinklers. My fence, already patched twice, leaned at a hopeless angle where their car had clipped it. The smell of crushed tomato vines hung heavy in the air. It wasn't just crops they were killing. It was my peace. I knew then that polite complaints weren't going to stop them. If Missy and her Karen court wanted a fight, they'd get one, but I wasn't about to swing blindly. Not with Missy's claws sunk into every bylaw and her gossip pipeline running through every backyard fence in the neighborhood. So I started watching. Every morning before chores, I set my phone on record and pointed it toward the dirt path where they cut through. Every evening, I walked the perimeter, logging damage in a notebook. Dates, times, tire marks, fence posts snapped, footprints where they'd even cut across on foot. The evidence started stacking up, but so did the audacity. By the end of the week, Patricia rolled down her window as she tore through the field and shouted, "Thanks for the shortcut, neighbor." The roar of her engine drowned out my reply. That was the moment something in me snapped. This wasn't just about crops or fences anymore. This was about control, about Missy's little HOA kingdom deciding my land was theirs to play with. And if they thought I was going to fold, they hadn't seen stubborn yet. Because I already had a plan brewing, and if it worked, the next time the sisters plowed through my field, they'd regret ever laying a tire on my dirt. Missy introduced her newest initiative, a walking path that just happened to run straight through my barn. That was her opening line at the monthly HOA meeting, delivered with the kind of smug enthusiasm usually reserved for ribbon cuttings and bake sales. The words hung in the air like the stench of manure, and for a moment, the room was dead quiet. Then came the clapping, Patricia's sharp, eager claps, followed by Jolene's sing-song, "Oh, that would be lovely. I swear, if you ever want to see real politics in action, don't watch the news. Just sit in an HOA meeting where Missy Davenport has the gavel. Every nod, every chuckle, every fake gasp. It was all rehearsed, choreographed, like I was watching community theater with my land as the set piece. The audacity almost made me laugh. Almost. But then I saw neighbors jotting notes, glancing at me as if I was the unreasonable one. That's when I knew this wasn't a suggestion. It was an ambush. Let me rewind. 2 weeks earlier, I'd started noticing a pattern. Every time I lodged a complaint, whether about the Karen's joyrides or about Missy brushing me off, the very next week, a new initiative popped up in the HOA newsletter. A community tool shed that just so happened to block my driveway. A mandatory landscaping inspection that flagged only my hedges. And now, a walking path that, according to Missy, would enhance connectivity between the neighborhood and the main road. Enhance connectivity. Translation, legalize the Karen's shortcut. I tried to keep my cool. "Missy," I said during that meeting, my voice carrying across the cafeteria where we held our gatherings, "that's private land. You can't vote in a walking path through someone's barn." She gave me the kind of look you give a child who insists 2 + 2 = 5. "We're not taking anything from you," she cooed. "We're simply opening dialogue about possibilities. Surely, as a good neighbor, you want to contribute to the community's growth." Patricia leaned forward in her chair. "It's dangerous walking along the main road. Someone's going to get hurt. You'd really rather risk lives than let people stroll through your field." I could feel the room turning. People murmuring, nodding, sipping their lukewarm coffee. It's amazing how fast fear spreads in a cul-de-sac. Missy knew it, and she milked it like a pro. So I stopped arguing. I smiled, I nodded, and inside I started taking notes. The next morning, I pulled every HOA newsletter from the past 6 months out of my junk drawer. Highlighted the suspicious initiatives. Cross-referenced dates with when I'd filed complaints. The pattern was undeniable. Every grievance I raised turned into a weapon repurposed against me. And I wasn't the only one. Mrs. Ortega, 2 streets over, had complained about noisy teens. A week later, Missy proposed a youth gathering space, a basketball hoop right in front of her house. The Hendersons had fought over trash pickup times. Suddenly, the HOA rolled out a pilot program requiring bins to be set out at 6 a.m. sharp, just when Mr. Henderson left for his overnight shift. It wasn't leadership, it was punishment dressed up as civic duty. I started recording more than tire tracks. I filmed entire HOA meetings, hiding my phone beneath a notebook. I saved emails, newsletters, text threads in a neat little digital folder labeled Project Firewood. because that's what it felt like, stacking logs one by one, waiting for the right spark. But Missy didn't slow down. If anything, she doubled down. One afternoon, I found Patricia in my field again, except this time she wasn't in her SUV. She was walking, arms outstretched like she was conducting a tour. A couple of neighbors followed behind her, nodding at the view. "Can I help you?" I called, trying not to let my voice crack with rage. Patricia beamed. "Oh, just showing folks where the path might go. Isn't it charming? Right between your barn and the tomatoes. Perfect for strollers." I felt my blood pressure spike. "You don't get to plan paths on my property." "Well," she said with mock innocence, "we'll see what the HOA decides." She left muddy footprints on my porch as she walked back, like a calling card. That night I sat at my kitchen table under the hum of the overhead light, staring at my growing pile of evidence. My hands smelled like dirt and tomato vines from trying to repair the damage, but my mind was sharp. I realized I wasn't just documenting harassment anymore. I was building a case. Not in the courts, at least not yet, but in the court of public opinion. Because as much as Missy ruled with bylaws, she ruled even more with whispers, and whispers could be turned. The mini-climax came sooner than I expected. At the next meeting, Missy unveiled a glossy poster board with a map of the proposed walking path, little dotted lines snaking across my property. Patricia and Jolene clapped like cheerleaders, while Missy declared, "This is about community safety. This is about progress." I raised my hand, calm as could be. "Before you vote, I'd like to share a short video." I connected my phone to the projector. The screen lit up with footage. Patricia's SUV plowing through my crops, Jolene waving out the window, Missy laughing during a backyard barbecue, bragging that she could make anything look like a community initiative. Gasps echoed through the room like fireworks. Missy slammed the gavel. "This is out of order." But the damage was done. Neighbors exchanged looks, murmured doubts, shifted uncomfortably in their folding chairs. For the first time, the tide wasn't entirely on her side. And that's when I knew I'd finally hit a nerve. Of course, Missy wasn't going to take this lying down. I saw it in her narrowed eyes, the twitch of her jaw. As the meeting adjourned, she leaned in close, her perfume sharp as lemons and steel. "You don't know who you're messing with," she whispered. Maybe she was right. But what she didn't know was that I'd barely started stacking the firewood. The day their SUV disappeared beneath a sinkhole in my pasture, I knew karma had finally RSVP'd. One minute, Patricia and Jolene were grinning like queens of the cul-de-sac, tires spitting mud. The next, their shiny white crossover sank nose first into the earth, headlights glaring like panicked eyes, exhaust coughing out in defeat. I stood at the edge of the field, rain dripping from my hat brim, watching it all happen like a slow-motion movie. There was no satisfaction quite like hearing Jolene's shrill scream echo across the pasture as the ground swallowed her precious leather seats. Neighbors trickled out to the street, phones in hand, voices buzzing like a Greek chorus. "Is that the Karen's car? Oh my God, did they actually drive through again?" I didn't have to say a word. The field spoke for itself. But let me rewind, because this moment wasn't an accident. It was the finale to weeks of pressure building, storm clouds both literal and political. After I exposed Missy's little walking path stunt, she doubled her efforts to discredit me. Flyers showed up in mailboxes claiming I was anti-community. HOA newsletters accused me of hoarding land. At the next meeting, she tried to slip in a motion to fine me for neglecting fence repairs, conveniently ignoring that the only reason my fence was broken was because her best friends kept plowing through it. Still, I kept my cool. My evidence folder, now thick enough to rival a phone book, sat ready on my desk. Tire tracks, timestamps, copies of bylaws. I wasn't just prepared, I was armed. Then the rains came. 3 straight days of storms turned my dirt path into soup. The soil was already weakened from months of joyrides, compacted, eroded, and ignored. By Sunday morning, a sagging line had appeared across the ground, like a warning crease before a tear. I saw it, noted it, and thought, only an idiot would drive over that now. Enter Patricia and Jolene. They barreled in late that afternoon, probably fresh from one of Missy's backyard rosé sessions, laughing as their tires flung wet earth into my rows of corn. I heard the rev of the engine first, then the splatter against my barn wall. By the time I reached the porch, the earth gave way. The front end dropped, mud bubbling up around the bumper like it was trying to drag the whole vehicle under. Patricia shrieked. Jolene screamed, "Hit reverse! Hit reverse!" The tires only spun deeper, flinging muck into the air until the engine wheezed into silence. By the time they scrambled out, their pastel yoga outfits were splattered with mud, their hair plastered to their heads. I almost pitied them. Almost. Of course, the HOA wasted no time trying to pin this disaster on me. That evening, Missy herself marched up my porch, heels clicking against the wood, umbrella snapping in the wind like a weapon. "This is negligence," she declared, pointing toward the stranded SUV still half buried in my field. "Your poor land maintenance created a hazard. Patricia and Jolene could have been seriously injured." I didn't bother hiding my smirk. On private property they weren't supposed to be on in the first place. Missy's eyes narrowed. "If you'd allowed the walking path, this could have been avoided. The HOA will be billing you for damages." That's when I pulled out my ace. A thick manila envelope, fresh from county zoning, stamped with an official seal. I'd filed a complaint weeks earlier, citing repeated trespassing and property damage. The inspector had visited, quietly, while Missy was busy running her circus. And the report? Oh, it was delicious. "Actually," I said, sliding the document across my porch table, "county zoning has ruled this is an unauthorized easement. My property is explicitly off limits. Any further trespassing or damage will result in fines, payable by the offenders." Missy skimmed the paper, her lipstick smile faltering for the first time I could remember. Behind her, Patricia was shrieking at a tow truck operator who refused to pull the SUV out until she signed a liability waiver. Jolene was sobbing into her phone, no doubt trying to spin the story for sympathy. The neighbors watched it all unfold like the climax of a soap opera. And the best part? Nobody rushed to defend them. Not after seeing the footage I'd released. Not after realizing how often Missy had twisted the rules. The whispers had shifted. For once, they weren't about me. They were about her. By the end of the week, Missy called an emergency meeting. Her gavel didn't sound quite so sharp this time. She tried to rally support, framing the sinkhole as proof the neighborhood needed her leadership. But the murmurs drowned her out. Questions about misuse of power, favoritism, shady motions. The vote to remove her as president wasn't unanimous, but it was decisive. As for Patricia and Jolene, they were left footing the bill for the tow, the repairs, and, thanks to my zoning report, damages to my land. Their shiny crossover returned with a bent axle and a permanent stench of swamp mud. I couldn't have scripted it better if I tried. But the true victory came in black and white. A formal letter from the county declaring my farm off limits. No walking paths, no community easements, no shortcuts. Just mine, the way it was always meant to be. Still, as I tacked that letter onto my fridge with a magnet, I couldn't shake the feeling Missy wasn't finished. Women like her don't go quietly. They regroup. They scheme. And something in the tight set of her jaw as she left that meeting told me she was already plotting her comeback. The Karens may have been buried in mud, but Missy? She was still out there, sharpening her claws.